Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are, and welcome to a very special broadcast, a live talk show featuring Kentake Malopenza, founder of Lily of the Valley Healing Services. Before I get to her, I would just offer some information about our group here. First of all, my name is Dipchand Ramcharitar, and I am the Outreach and Development Coordinator at Voice of Men 360. Voice of Men 360 is a nonprofit organization founded in 2020 and is based in London, Ontario, Canada. Voice of Men 360 was born out of seeing a tremendous need and stepping up to provide services to help support and overcome men and boys' life challenges. We are part of International Men's Day. International Men's Day have been serving for over 21 years, and so far 90 countries around the world joined together doing various activities regularly. International Men's Day follows 6 pillars, which is the overall well-being of men and boys. We follow in the same footsteps. Before I introduce our wonderful guest for today, I would like to go through our disclaimer. We would like to remind you that Voice of Men 360's mission is always delivered with good faith towards peaceful harmony. The views and opinions expressed in today's episode are those of our speakers and do not represent Voice of Men 360. We are not providing medical or therapeutic advice. Should you require that type of assistance, we recommend you contact a medical professional immediately. If you have any questions or concerns about today's episode or any Voice of Men 360 content, please email us at info@voiceofmen360. So on with the show. And again, we have a very special and wonderful guest, Kentake Malopenza, founder of Lily of the Valley Healing Services, which focuses on youth development, among other things, embracing parenthood, the realities of homeschooling, and connecting to important and critical areas as botany and ecology. So welcome to the show, Kentake. Please give us some background of who you are and what you're about.
Good morning and greetings to Voice of Men, Dipchand and Sibam. Thank you for this opportunity to present myself to the global community. Much appreciated. So my name is Kentake Malopenza, and I am a mother, full-time. I was a full-time stay-at-home mother for the majority of my life. My son is now in the latter years of his adolescence, and I was a homeschooling mother for several years. I also studied holistic health and plant-based medicine in West Africa and the Caribbean for many years, independent research and study, which is still ongoing. I've been a world traveler for several years as well, and continuing to travel the world with my son. And I am also very interested and passionate about plant-based and holistic health medicine, holistic health and nutrition, and indigenous foods and medicine. So those passions combined, homeschooling, being a full-time mother, involved mother, and also starting and launching my own eco-tourism enterprise in Jamaica was inspired by my son, was inspired by the fact that I was able to overcome challenges of being a sole support parent. And a lot of what I am doing today in terms of establishing various business enterprises is inspired by the fact that I had to find alternative methods to generate income that would allow me to be a full-time parent.
Well,
Part of what took place in my life approximately around 2014, 2013, 2014, was that I found that I could not be a full-time parent and be in the corporate workforce in Toronto, because a lot of employers were actually requiring of me to put most of my effort into work. And I found myself being led on a spiral of embracing values that are not true to myself. I had to leave my son with various people. I was in a position where I did not have the opportunity to be an involved parent. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and establish businesses based on what I'm passionate about.
wow, that's fantastic. It's amazing how, you've transferred from, all those adversities, if I may say so,
Yes.
to come up with something so productive and meaningful, not only to, to your community as such, but generally to people of all walks of life. So that's very inspiring, I must say, what you've done, considering what you had to have dealt with.
Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. So, how can young people benefit from your enterprise?
Well, firstly, I'd like to state that the enterprise or enterprises are based on needs and conditions that I saw affecting the young people, obviously of Toronto, because that's where I've lived for the majority of the time that I was a parent. However, I was living in Montreal prior to that, and I moved to Toronto in 2012. Just to be clear, Montreal is a very family-oriented city. It's a much slower pace than Toronto, for those of you who are familiar with the climate. And I'm giving this introduction into my lifestyle because it will lead people listening to the show to understand why I established the enterprises at the time that I did. So Akoma Ntoaso Tours is an enterprise that is based on ecotourism and the study of agriculture, farming, and the development of skills and trade for young people. So here in Jamaica, where I am currently living at this time with my son, there is a group of elders that I work with who, and one particular elder who is very skilled at crafts, and he makes his own shoes. He creates and his own business enterprise through his own two hands. There are farmers that I work with. There are farmers that are part of our network, Akoma Ntoaso network. There are agriculturalists that are part of the network. And there are organizations as well that are part of the network that will be able to introduce our young people to what it is like to be an entrepreneur. If you choose that later on in life, you would like to develop skills and trade to be able to do things and create things from your own two hands. If you'd like to learn how to crochet shoes, if you'd like to learn how to crochet hats, if you'd like to learn how to do carpentry, these are things that are often not accessible to our young people in inner city areas. Sometimes there are a few programs that may take place in Toronto, for example. I've heard of programs such as, okay, this is a 1-month program from October 25th to November 25th. And in this time, youth between the ages of 12 to 18 can learn carpentry, for example. These programs are often one of a kind and usually offered in isolated circumstances. Parents who work two jobs will not be able to be involved in community to be able to know exactly when to register their child for a specific program. So Akoma Ntoaso Tours actually is a family and community business where we invite people to Jamaica to introduce them to the entrepreneurial legacy that is here. We visit farms, we visit agricultural spaces, we visit botanical gardens, we visit places across the island that relate to the heritage, the ecological heritage and botanical heritage of the land. And we offer this program to independent schools, private schools who would like to visit the island. We offer accommodations. We offer hotel accommodations, breakfast, pick up and drop off from the airport. And it is well organized with a team of agriculturalists and ecological specialists, I would call them, who work with me as the founder of Akoma Ntoaso Tours to introduce people coming from outside of the culture to view the culture from an indigenous perspective, because we know there's many different aspects of Jamaican culture that people may know about, but oftentimes farming and agriculture and the preservation of our ecological heritage is not something that's really at the core of what people know about Caribbean culture. So a lot of people in Toronto may, visit Caribbean festivals and, experience Caribbean culture from the perspective of entertainment, but there's a lot more to the Caribbean legacy than just entertainment.
Okay, that's quite a mouthful there, and you certainly have. It's refreshing to see something of this nature offered on a sort of an organic level. What I mean by that is, yeah, people are working with their own hands. You're going on actual sites where people can see firsthand what goes on in a farm and whatnot, and you providing all the conveniences that go with that, like transportation and accommodation and whatnot.
Exactly,
So
correct.
you seem to have everything well worked out and well planned. And again, commendations to you for a job well done. Sticking on that same theme, how can your venture specifically enrich the lives of the indigenous community?
Okay, well, that's such a loaded question, but when we speak about the indigenous community, there's so many aspects because you have Australian indigents who are indigenous. You have people from Papua New Guinea who are indigenous. You have indigenous to that land. You have, for example, you have Tamil Nadu people who are indigenous to in India and so forth. So when we speak about the indigenous community in specific to Jamaica, Jamaica is 85% of African descent. And then you have also, as you know, in the Caribbean, we have a large population of East Indian, people of East Indian descent, and we have people of Asian descent who are, again, indigenous to the island. So because of the predominance of people of African descent, much of our focus is on the indigenous West African and Arawak heritage, as well as on, bringing knowledge of the various foods that are indigenous in this land. For example, we know that roti is, one of the indigenous foods of Trinidad and Tobago, but it's also indigenous to Jamaica as well. You know what I mean? So one of the things that we aspire to do with Akoma Ntoaso Tours, with its accompanying branch, which is Lily of the Valley Healing Institute, which I hope I will be able to speak about a little bit later on today. One of the ways in which it can enrich the indigenous community is that the way that I've seen the Caribbean culture being portrayed in Toronto is, by no means do I mean this as a disrespect. I found that it was very biased. It's a very biased way of looking at the Caribbean culture, because when you go to Caribbean festivals in Toronto, there's, as I said, there's a focus on entertainment. But when you're in the culture itself, you see that there are so many other aspects to the culture, such as vendorship, entrepreneurship, the development of skills and trade. For example, there's an elder in my community who makes mattresses, and I needed a new mattress, and I bought a brand new mattress from him, which he made by hand. There are people who, are involved in carpentry, who make tables. There are farmers who have their own land, who grow their own food. So these are forms of apprenticeship that a lot of young people can learn and develop through interacting with the community of entrepreneurs within Jamaica. And I hope it can inspire people in the Caribbean diaspora, whether that be Toronto, whether that be Montreal, whether that be Calgary, whether it be Vancouver, Manitoba, wherever Caribbean people may find themselves, that we can develop some type of partnership whereby other aspects of the Caribbean legacy can be introduced to our young people, other than just festivals, parties, corn on the cob, and, music, calypso, reggae, etc. There are many other aspects of entrepreneurship. Many of us are coming from legacies of entrepreneurs. For example, my grandmother was an entrepreneur. My great-grandmother was an entrepreneur. So a lot of us are coming from business legacies. And for some reason, this is not something that is being passed on through our historical experience as we travel and move throughout the world, whether it be Canada, the United States, Europe, the UK. We are not continuing some of these legacies. I'm teaching our young people that, you can own a piece of land, and you can farm that land, and then you can, have a truck, and then, you can invest in the Caribbean, you can invest in Africa, you can come and learn about how to develop certain skills that you can therefore use wherever you go in the world. So one of the ways with the direct response is one of the ways that Akoma and Ntoaso tours can enrich the indigenous community is I believe it has the potential to help us to retrace our steps, to look at some of the legacies that our foreparents left us in terms of building entrepreneurship and building skills and development for young people. With the way the world is working now, things like cashiers, things like, no frills, if you go to various places, they no longer need cashiers. They no longer need those types of employees, because now machines are doing the work for you. So you need to have a type of skill or trade that you can do of your own, that you can do with your hands, that you can create out of your own ingenuity. You have to have some type of skill, a personal skill that you can develop, and that which can bring you a source of monetary income. There are also various studios that offer pottery classes. They offer photography classes. There are photographers that can train and assist young people, particularly young men, which I'm interested in. I'm interested in my son as well, developing some of these skills. So there are various programs and services that take place within the island that youth can participate in through the network of Akoma and Ntoaso tours. So my objective is to help and assist young people, both women, young ladies, and young men, to develop a form of skills and trade development through using the resources of our community, in particular through the connection that I have with the Rastafari community in Jamaica. Some of these elders are those who have been creating entrepreneurial development programs throughout the island for a very long time, and are now working on creating workshops for young people to participate in the future.
Thank you very much. That is a wonderful, wonderful gesture on your part. You're right. I live in Toronto, well, on suburban Toronto, and basically we're known for partying, Caribana, and stuff like that. And your vision, your foresight in seeing there is so much more to offer from a Caribbean perspective, from the indigenous. When you look at our legacy, our rich legacy, we've grown crops, we've done all these things for ourselves for years, and years and years. So it's important to highlight those to the community at large, so they can see what we are truly about, instead of just a partying on Caribana Day. So again, you've done a fantastic job here of trying to bring that to the forefront. So
Thank you so
switching
much.
gears as we move forward, I just want to touch on something more personal with you. What
Mm.
type of relationship did you have with your dad growing up, and how did that help shape your future out of childhood?
Well, um, I that's such an interesting question, and I'm inspired to take a pause and reflect, because when you ask a question like that, it causes you to reflect on your childhood. The interesting thing about my father, the father that I knew growing up, my stepfather was actually from which was the father that I knew, was from Trinidad and Tobago, and he's from a place called San Fernando, and he was a Rastafari, and he was a drummer, he was a sculptor, he was an entrepreneur. He was a cook, but he was a sculptor, and a drummer. And he was someone who was very, and oh, sorry, steel pan player as well. So he was very skilled in steel pan, playing the steel pan. And he was the father that, he was not my biological father, but doesn't make a difference. He's the father that I knew.
Right.
So essentially, he introduced me to my African heritage from a very young age, and made it very clear to me that you made it very clear to me that my culture, what was always should always be viewed as primary in my life, and that my culture influences everything that I do. It influences my food, it influences my education, and so forth. So he was very instrumental in my life, from a very young age, from the age of 3. And I would say from the age of 3, those were the memories that were very predominant in my life, memories of him that were very predominant in my life. And he was essentially an entrepreneur, because he was a well-renowned drummer who was on demand. So he would do drumming shows, and I would go to the drumming shows and witness him at the drumming shows. And he was also had trained other drummers in Montreal, had been very instrumental in the establishment of Montreal Caribana. At that time, it was, for many people who may not remember, at the time it was on Girard. It was not in downtown uh, uh, Montreal where it is now. So he was a community activist, but also very much of a entrepreneurial artist. So his art is what made him well known in his community. And he was, as I said, a sculptor. He sculpted art out of wood and would sell his art. So he had art displays, art workshops, and so forth. So my life was shaped around seeing him do these miraculous things with instruments and with wood and natural materials. I'm seeing this from a very young age. So my mind was developed in a way that I was already being trained in artistic journey through my father.
Sounds like he's a wonderful role model, and you
Yes.
certainly seem to have learned a lot with him. So we are running out of time. I have a couple of questions more for you. So can you briefly, if you can, say what the major challenges facing young men in your community, and how do you think those can be best addressed?
Well, I'm inspired to reflect again on some of the experiences I had with my son in Toronto, whereby I see that I saw that many of the young men in the region that we lived in, Scarborough, were facing challenges of, what the elders, Caribbean elders, would call idleness, as they say, you're idle. They, their parents are working two jobs, or even if they have both parents in the home, some of them don't have both parents in the home. If they have a mother in the home, the mother's working two jobs, and the parent is not there to prepare food or to prepare a meal for them. So most of them are not being homeschooled. Most of them are not having access to, different programs, the after school programs, because the parents are working to make ends meet. Because the rent that's in Toronto, the rent that that is that needs to be paid in according to Toronto standards. You can't make that on a minimum wage job, so you have to work two minimum wage jobs. So a lot of the young men in the neighborhood didn't have a lot to do, so they're on the street, hours of night, and there's not really a community center nearby where they can go to maybe learn any type of, as I said, learn any trade. There's not really any type of organizational, structured community center where they can, maybe go play some ball, or, maybe they can go to the library at the least, but there's no one really there to organize their energy in any type of productive way. So one of the things that I'm seeing that the youth are facing in Toronto is what you would call displacement, because they have parents, but the parents are not really around, and they're not around because they're have to, overexert themselves to pay an exorbitant amounts of rent, which I'm sure is becoming more serious at this time as well in a place like Toronto and even Montreal and other metropolitan cities in Canada. One of the things that I'm seeing that the young men are facing is lack of mentorship. Okay. There are many, I've been to many events in Toronto where people are speaking, and for example, I know yourself, Dipchand, I know Sivam, I know that Voice of Men. I can say, okay, I have a rapport with Voice of Men, and I know these elders in the community who are out here making themselves known, getting to know various people in the community, getting to know what is happening and who is really involved in the lives, who's really involved in family life. However, there's a lot of people who maybe have, academic qualifications to speak about youth issues and present themselves as experts. I'm a youth advocate. I'm a youth advocate person, or I'm a youth advocate expert, and I am expert on this inner city youth problems, but no one in the community really knows them. One of the things that I see that's happening is a lot of people are seen to be speaking about youth issues and speaking about the challenges that our youth are facing, but there's no solutions.
Okay. I'm sorry, Kentucky. We're running out of time. I wish we had more time to expand. You certainly have some brilliant ideas, but for lack of time, I do apologize. We have to move on. I have one other question for you, but before I do, I have some further information about our group. There are no limitations to gender, age, nationality, or ethnic groups. All walk of life can participate in any of our shows. If you want to be a guest on any of our shows or willing to be part of our organization and help us directly or indirectly, please reach out to us. We would love to work with individuals, professionals, experts, community organizations, associations, corporations, government officials, and businesses. Our phone number is 226-289-8784. Our email address is info@voiceofmen360.org. Our website is www.voiceofmen360.org. You can find us on all social media, Facebook. Join our group as you can see our daily activities. Please invite your friends as well. Our other social media platforms are Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Voice of Men 360. So we are coming to the end of our program, and I have one final question. And again, we are a bit pressed for time, but can you briefly tell us, Kentake, about Lily of the Valley Healing Services, and also if someone wanted to get in contact with you about what you do, how can they do so?
Okay, thank you.
Anytime.
Lily of the Valley Healing Institute is a branch of Akoma Ntoaso Taurus. It is specifically designed for people who are not really interested in world travel. And at Lily of the Valley Healing Institute, we offer online classes and workshops on the necessity of reaffirming our connection to our indigenous foods around the world. So we offer online classes and workshops focused on how to restore the memory of our indigenous foods, where to find indigenous foods, how to prepare them, what are the health benefits of various indigenous foods that are not really well known to us today in the Western world, foods that a lot of our foreparents would consume that we no longer consume due to maybe inaccessibility, lack of awareness, or basic lack of knowledge of what these foods are. So when I say indigenous foods, I mean ancient foods that have been eaten from maybe 600 to 3,000 years. There's our trees, there's our fruits. There are various indigenous foods such as acerola, such as acai, that a lot of us do no longer have access to because they're mostly focused in the health food store, community health food store communities, etc. So I basically teach people different formats of how to find indigenous foods, how to access them, and where to access them, whether it be online, whether it be at various health food stores, and how to prepare various dishes and how to find various dishes and reincorporate it into our families. Some of these indigenous foods are from Ethiopia, Ghana, various parts of West Africa, the Caribbean, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, etc., and places like Papua New Guinea, places like the Philippines. Indigenous foods, meaning indigenous foods from around the world, not only focused on people of African descent, but focused on people of color around the world. And reincorporating these foods into our families, learning how to prepare these foods, which are mostly plant-based. This also includes both indigenous foods and indigenous plant-based medicine. I can be reached at akomatours@gmail.com. Our Akoma Ntoaso Tours website for people who are interested in world travel, in particular to Jamaica, rural Jamaica. My website is www.akomatours, AKOMA, tours, TOURS.yolasite, YOLASITE.com. I am on Instagram as Akoma Tours Liberty, where some of my indigenous food dishes are displayed. That is AKOMA TOURS LIVITY. And I am also accessible via WhatsApp. If you would like to ask questions, there is an opportunity for people who are interested in the Akoma tours or Lily of the Valley Healing Institute holistic health classes. We offer a free 15-minute introductory class into what we would receive. If you were to come on the tour, what it would entail, and also if you were to sign up for an online holistic class, what that would entail as well. So we offer a free 15-minute info session for those who are interested in learning more about what we offer. And my son as well is one of the employees in training for both of my businesses. So it is a family business that we are running as a family and community here in the Caribbean. And I thank you for this opportunity to present my family enterprise to the world community. It's much appreciated to both Sivam and yourself, Dipchand.
Well, thank you so much, Kentake. You have been a part of a video broadcast featuring the amazing Kentake Malopenza. We'd like to especially thank her for the inspiring and meaningful input that she has produced today. Thank you so much, Kentake, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. To everyone out there, you're more than welcome. To everyone out there, we hope that you enjoyed this broadcast and you can take something productive from it. So everyone out there, good day, good night, good evening.